welcome to the Cedar Falls regular City Council meeting this October 15, 2018. I'll now call this meeting to order and ask for a roll call from Madam Clerk, please.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer. Here. Cruz.
Here.
Blanford.
Here.
Guerra.
Here.
Wieland.
Here.
Green.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item C, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting October 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Any agenda revisions, Madam Clerk?
I have no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item E is old business. E1 is passed ordinance 2932, granting a partial property tax exemption for construction of a warehouse addition at Savannah Park Drive upon its second consideration. Is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 2 is passed ordinance 2933, amending the Code of Ordinances by removing property located in the southwest corner of Highway 58 and West Ridgeway Avenue from agriculture to Highway 1, subject to certain conditions upon its second consideration. Is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 3 is passed ordinance 2934, amending the Code of Ordinances by removing property located at the north end of Lakeshore Drive from agriculture to residential upon its second consideration. Is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Any comments from, before I do that, I do want to get some background information from staff, and then we can open it up for comments for council, if that's okay. We have someone from staff to give us an update. Karen?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At your last meeting, I believe there were some questions about the stormwater drainage on this property, and there have been a lot of concerns expressed of the public, and I just wanted to let you know that the staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission are taking those concerns seriously. We thought it might be helpful, even though this is just at the rezoning stage, to take a look at that, the drainage that exists today on the property and how that water is flowing today, just to understand the background before the subdivision plat then comes to you in the future. So our apologies for maybe not covering this fully last time at the last meeting. But this slide on the screen shows the existing drainage patterns, how the water is flowing based on the topography today. As you can see, the water flows from the southwest to the northeast through the existing subdivision on Lakeshore Drive, and the property that's being the subject of rezoning is at the top of your screen, the right-hand corner. It's a large property that's undeveloped currently. Just zooming in on that a little more carefully, you can see that large property that's currently being proposed for rezoning, and the north end of Lakeshore Drive and Lilliput. And you can see what's happening there is during a storm event, the water, because it's coming from the southwest. There's 2 sewer intakes at the end of Lilliput, and the outlet those storm outlets into the creek at the bottom of the hill, north of the dam. So you can see those green lines on the slide, the 2 intakes there at Lilliput, and it goes north along Lakeshore Drive and down through a pipe and outlets the stream at the base of the hill. Currently. Now when those intakes get over, if it ponds there at Lilliput, if those storm sewer intakes can't keep up, if it's a large storm event, and so that it ponds at the intersection of Lilliput and Lakeshore Drive. And if that ponding is large enough, then the water flows over the land, off the end of Lakeshore Drive, and down the hillside to the stream. So you can see that, just naturally that storm is, the water's going to flow downhill. So it does go across overland flow, uncontrolled, then down the hillside, and has cut a channel then down close to where the stream corridor is down at the base of the hill. At the end of that arrow, the blue arrow there is where the creek is. You can also see in the photograph here the dam that's part of the development that occurred in, I believe it was originally platted in 1969, so prior to a lot of the stormwater rules that we have today. That dam then outlets to about the same location that the storm sewer coming off the end of Lakeshore Drive is outputting down at the bottom of the hill and about, so there's some erosion that's occurring there. So there are some concerns about that. But that's the existing situation today. And so I think the hope is that with development of the property and the design of the subdivision, that maybe some of those concerns can be addressed in the future. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you
You
have.
bet, absolutely. I'll open it for council after the motion in a second.
Thank you.
I'll open up to the public if they'd like to speak on this.
Hello, I'm Tammy Stahl. I live at 1009 Lakeshore Drive. I'm before you to voice my concerns regarding the proposed rezoning and development of the ag property north of us, which is to become Park Ridge Estates subdivision. I'm not anti-growth, but I'm very enthusiastic about educated development and not developing property for some at the expense and detriment of others. This just seems like common sense and fair to me. There is other property surrounding us which could also request soon to be developed in the near future. So now's the time to address and deal with the mostly unintended previous consequences, so all the future developments are established with a firm, upstanding foundation, not further burdening existing properties. In this process, I have already experienced having my voice silenced after I organized a completely impartial and productive meeting very publicly at the Planning and Zoning Committee, inviting all the Planning and Zoning members while at the meeting and trying to call each city council member to invite them, only to be told by the city's lawyer that we could not meet with either as a whole or individually, so that I could show you exactly what was happening to our property environment, as you really cannot see what's happening by mere pictures and maps. Because I wasn't allowed to have any of you come, I also sent pictures for everyone to see, and I was told that they would be presented to all of you. And not once have these pictures been presented, even though I was told that they would be. I have also, just this weekend, I was informed that there were city codes that we could sign a petition with our concerns and be presented, and it would allow for a 3/4 majority to vote on this. I was just now tonight told that my petition is null and void because it was not only not for tonight, but ever, because it was not presented soon enough. And in this process, I was also told that the city would use every technicality possible to silence us, and that's what we're experiencing. In my process of taking my petition around to be signed, I was told by several of the neighbors that they were afraid to sign the petition because of the strength and power of the developer, who's also slash planning and zoning member, and they were afraid of retaliation in doing business with them. So they were afraid of the retaliation. So it's just another way that we're being silenced. It's kind of frustrating. Last meeting, I had the pleasure of attending, and where there was much time was spent addressing neighborhood/chicken relations. It would seem the city is animal friendly, so I would like to take a bit of time to talk about our pond. It is the home to geese, mink, muskrats, river otter, blue heron, kingfisher, cranes, green herons, mallards, many migrating ducks, egrets, turtles, beaver, fish, just to name a few of the animals. Unfortunately, our established bottom feeder fish have already been killed off because of the deterioration of our pond. And this is as a result of the silt that's coming from upstream, not our silt, but the city silt. Our dam is now also being affected both on the front and back side of it by the extreme water flow, which is putting our pond life at danger by the survival of our dam. I've been told that there is water study being done by city professionals, but I've not heard about any of the results from this study, so that we can address it in a timely manner as these decisions are being made. I'd like to know why we're not hearing about this. We are also significant taxpayers, and I thought we had more than 5 minutes.
No, ma'am, 5 minutes.
Yeah, and there are monies available in the development impact fee that could go towards this, but I would like to know what they're being used for instead. There are so many ways the city could help with the water issues, including helping us find a place to put the silt that the city, that's coming from the city. If our issues aren't addressed at all, I think that the citizens of Cedar Falls need to be really concerned about the developments that are going on. If the developments unintentionally affect their properties and the city says it's not our problem, it's your problem, we need to be even more concerned about all the development, which I am pro, but not if it's at our existing property owners' demise.
I'm sorry, Ms. Stahl, time is up. Thank you. Anything further? Anything further from council coming full circle?
Just to reiterate, Mayor, when the plat comes forward, the stormwater side of this gets addressed completely. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, the developer will have to produce stormwater calculations that show the runoff from the proposed development, and will show all the different drainage patterns on the property. And because this property that's being rezoned is taking the water actually from the existing development that's flowing north onto this property, they'll have to, they're trying to address some of the existing concerns about the erosion that's occurring at the bottom of the hill.
Yes, Mr.
Can you put up that last slide, possibly, where you showed the pooling of the water at the end of the road there? That can be, will this be factored in? Because if we have a high spot to the north at the end of Lakefield Drive so that the water can flow, or improve the storm sewers, the intakes at Lilliput? So not trying to get too far into the subdivision design, but one of the thoughts is right now the low spot is occurring, of course, at Lilliput, and there's a higher spot at the end of Lakeshore Drive. The idea is to move that low spot further to the north and to abandon the storm sewer pipe that's going to the bottom of the hill currently, so it's not so close to the outlet pipe of the dam.
You have a natural flow of water out to
So,
the...
and then to handle the stormwater with that new low point that's further to the north, handle it better with stormwater facilities on the site itself.
Okay.
Anything further from council?
Just to clarify then, so it's possible that through this development, the situation in the pond would improve? Is that what you're...
So the issues with the silting in the pond are taking water from the south, so that's a different matter. But as far as the erosion that's occurring at the outlet of the dam and on the property that's being rezoned, the design of the subdivision itself could help with the stormwater drainage. So it's right now it's just it's an undeveloped farm field is what it is. So.
Getting rezoned.
Right.
Anything further, Mr. Whalen?
Thank you. There were a bunch of issues that were brought up that rightfully belong when we bring the site plan forward. Staff has already said these will be addressed, and I just made a note of all the concerns that were presented to make sure I got them all and that they are addressed. So we are very interested in making sure we addressed unintended consequences. So there will be another meeting on this after the rezoning where it's more appropriate to get this. But in the meantime, I'll make sure these issues are brought before staff so they get addressed. So thank you for bringing them forward.
Anything further? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Michelle Buchan. I'm at 1226 Lakeview Drive. So I'm in a little bit different area that would be affected by this. And I'm concerned when our reason for saying this is going to be okay to add more stormwater to this area is because we already have a lot of runoff that's troublesome in this area. I don't think that's a reason to do it. I think that's a reason not to do it. So I'm a little confused by that argument. I addressed the Planning and Zoning Committee, and at the end of that meeting, somebody surmised that, well, I think we can address all the issues except for this person's residence over here, and that was referring to me. I live downstream from all of this. And so no matter where you put the water on the east side of this development, it's adding to erosion to my property. And I just wanted to be a witness to what I've seen over the last 11 years that I've lived there. There's a lot of serious erosion, a lot of big trees have come down. The flooding, it's already gone up to my house. After we moved in, it's like I live on a lake. There's a lot of water there, and I think to be adding to it may be irresponsible. I would love to see more study of this before a decision is made. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Before you, council, any more further comments, questions? This requires a roll call vote, please. Second consideration.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item F is new business. F1 is a consent calendar. The following items will be acted upon by a voice vote in a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council requests that item be pulled for such reasoning, or if the public does as well. Anyone from the council to pull an item from the public, the consent calendar? I'll summarize briefly. Item A is received and filed the Committee of the Whole of October 1. B is approved the application for Community Main Street for a fireworks display permit for November 23rd. C is approving applications for permits and licenses. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 2 is a resolution calendar. The following items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion. Does someone from the council or the public request an item to be pulled for such consideration? Is there any such request from council? Mr. Blanford.
Mr. Mayor, we need to pull item E as an echo for abstention.
Mr. Mayor, G,
G.
yes.
Mr. Mayor, item 2, Bravo.
2B. So I have B, E, and G. Anyone from the public? Hearing and seeing none, I'll summarize the resolution calendar minus those items. Item A is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an engagement letter to perform recruitment services. C and D are resolutions levying a final assessment for costs incurred by the city to mow property located at 804 Searly Boulevard and 216 Iowa Street. Item F is approving and authorizing execution of an agreement for lease of artwork relative to placement of a sculpture in the city right-of-way at 311 Main Street as requested by the Cedar Falls Public Art Committee and Art Culture Board. Item H is approving and accepting a partial release of real estate mortgage, a warranty deed, and a temporary easement for Center Street Recreational Trail Project. I is approving and authorizing execution of agreements and a grading easement in conjunction with the West First Street Reconstruction Project. J is a resolution approving and adopting payment standards for the city's Section 8 Rental Assistance Program. K is approving and authorizing execution of a letter of agreement for asbestos testing and clearing monitoring services relative to the North Cedar Falls Flood Buyout Program. Is there a motion to approve the resolution calendar minus B, E, and G?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Circling back to item B, it reads a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement for bookkeeping services with Sturgis Falls Celebration Incorporated. Is there a motion, please?
To approve.
Second.
Motion second. We'll open it up for discussion from council.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just have a concern about the city offering bookkeeping services to a non-governmental body. I understand we also do this with the Cedar Falls Community Foundation, and I just question whether it's appropriate for the city to be engaging those kind of services with non-governmental and what the background is on that. If there's a reason that they can't do that through a private agency or group.
Jennifer, do you have any follow-up with
Sure.
your involvement there?
Rob's absolutely correct. We provide bookkeeping services to only 2 entities, and that's the Cedar Falls Foundation and Sturgis Falls. The background on Sturgis Falls is, people may remember a couple years ago, there was some questions and concerns about Sturgis Falls, and they had a loan from the city and their ability to pay it back. And so for a lot of council members, you may recall that then I started attending the Sturgis Falls meeting just as a non-voting ex officio member. And the relationship really has been going very well. I attend those meetings. If there's questions about finance, they're more than willing to answer those. And then just about a year ago, they had an idea of, hey, maybe we'd like to work with the city to do our bookkeeping as well. And it's pretty basic bookkeeping, I will say, that we're doing for them. Processing checks, recording their deposits. I think you're right, Mr. Green, that it's probably unusual, but I think it is nice for us to have that relationship with Sturgis. It is, it really in some ways the city's best interest that we're able to make sure that they're accounting for things correctly. I think that was some of the concern expressed a couple years ago, maybe by council. So, so that's really the history on Sturgis. And so what we wanted to do a year ago when they approached that, we just kind of said, you know, we're not really sure what we're getting into. I think Sturgis Falls wasn't really sure what they were getting into with asking the city that. So we said, hey, let's just try this for a year and see how it goes. And so we did it. I think it went well. I think Sturgis Falls has been happy with it. It's worked well for our staff. And so then that's why we decided to come tonight with a actual formal document to formalize that and then proceed ahead with that. So does that help?
It does.
Any further questions by council? Anyone from the public? Hearing and seeing none, motions before you requires a roll call vote, please.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item E is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a First Amendment to agreement for animal services with the Cedar Bend Humane Society relative to pet licensing. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further comments from council? Public? Requires a roll call vote, please.
6 voting aye, 1 abstention, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item G is approving and authorizing execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Teamsters Union, local number 238, relative to earning compensatory time. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussions from council?
I'd like a little, I'm not quite sure who the Teamster Union is, and I'd like a little explanation of that.
Director Olson, do you have information on that?
Yeah, certainly I do. The police contract, union contract, allows for the police officer to accumulate up to 96 hours of comp time. They cannot exceed that time, or they are paid out in cash. We have a situation now where we have a lot of field training officers who are doing some training, and they are compensated comp time for certain hours of training. We asked they not take any time off, use that comp time during that training period because we don't want them absent. So in essence, we've kind of helped create this problem, and so we worked out an agreement with the union that we would exceed the 96 hours by 48 hours for about, I think it's 6 months or till June 30, I believe it is, for them to accumulate extra hours, and then they have to use it by that time. So it's a temporary agreement.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further comments by council? Public? Motions before you requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item G is there a motion to allow bills and payroll?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further comments from council? Roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item H, does council have any referrals this evening? Hearing and seeing none, moving on to item I, does City Council have any updates this evening? I do believe Director Olson has an update for the council.
Thank you, Mr.
staff,
Mayor.
and public.
So what I'd like to do is read some bios and introduce you to 4 public safety officers that are moving to the fire division next week. These 4 public safety officers have anywhere from 3 to 14 years of firefighting experience. In fact, one of them was a firefighter in another city before coming to Cedar Falls to be a police officer here. He was a full-time firefighter in Minnesota. Saw the ad here, which said you can be a police officer and a firefighter because of our cross-training program. He came here for that reason, so I thought that was an interesting story. So the fire chief, the assistant director, Birdie, and I met with 3 fire supervisors and discussed moving the PSOs to the fire shift, and we worked together and found 4 very willing candidates, highly qualified candidates. And so what I'd like to do this time is just to read a little bio on each one of them. And I believe Cable will put some of that information that we have for you. Captain Tim Smith was raised in Cedar Falls, a graduate of Cedar Falls High School. He has a bachelor's degree from Columbia Southern. He's a graduate certificate in fire science, undergraduate certificate he has in fire science. He has 14 years of firefighting experience in LaPorte City and Cedar Falls. He's Firefighter 1 certified. He's a Fire and Emergency Instructor 1 certified. He's a Hazardous Material Operations certified. He has National Incident Management System Training 100 through 800. He is an EMT. He's also a CPR first aid instructor. He's a certified arson investigator. He's attended the National Fire Academy Incident Safety Officer class. He attended a National Fire Academy Command and Control class. He's completed 9 to 12 classes towards the National Fire Academy Managing Officer certification. I believe he's the first public safety employee to attend that class. He's attended 96 hours of fire-specific leadership training. He's got 18 years of law enforcement experience, 8 years of supervisory experience, a firearm instructor, a member of the SWAT team, the bike patrol. He served as the Joint Police and Fire Training Coordinator for the last year and a half. He was Police Officer of the Year in 2010 and Supervisor of the Year in 2012. So you can see he's got quite a list of credentials there. What makes him an excellent candidate. Our next individual they're moving to fire next week is Lieutenant Kurt Schreiber. He's a lifelong resident of Cedar Falls, a graduate of Cedar Falls High School. He has a bachelor's degree from the University of Northern Iowa. He was a Marine Corps combat veteran. He served in Iraq during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He was awarded the Combat Action Ribbon for directly engaging enemy forces. He attained the military rank of Master Sergeant. He was a former dispatcher employed by Cedar Falls Police Department and then moved to the Public Safety Consolidated Dispatch Center as a dispatcher. He has 4 years of firefighting experience. He's Firefighter 1 certified, Hazardous Material Operations certified. He's got 22 years of law enforcement experience at both Dubuque and Cedar Falls, 8 years of supervisory experience, SWAT, sniper, accident investigator, taser instructor trained. In 1998, he received an Iowa Medal of Valor from Governor Tom Vilsack for rescuing a Cedar Falls resident from a burning vehicle during a fire call. And he represented the state of Iowa in 1998 at the annual Top Cops ceremony in Washington, D.C. Our next individual is Lieutenant John Zolendek, born and raised in Winona, Minnesota. He has a bachelor's degree from St. Mary's University and master's degree from St. Ambrose University. He was Graduate Student of the Year for St. Ambrose College in 2015. Marine Corps combat veteran serving in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Awarded the Navy Achievement Medal of Valor for skillful engaging the enemy while receiving incoming mortar rounds and small arms fire in Iraq. 14 years of firefighting experience, some of that as a full-time firefighter in Minnesota. And that was during 2004 and 2007. He's Firefighter 1 certified, Firefighter 2 certified, an EMT. He's a CPR AED instructor, Hazardous Material Operator certified, Incident Command System 100, 200, 700 certified. He went to a command and control of fire department operations at the National Fire Academy. 11 years of law enforcement experience with experience as in the SWAT team, a sniper, a firearms instructor, drug recognition expert, taser instructor, stop stick instructor, Glock armor, field sobriety instructor. He was Officer of the Year in 2014, and he was a Heroes Among Us recipient in 2018. Lieutenant Shane McNamara, next week will be moving to fire. He was born and raised in Story City, has a bachelor's degree from the University of Northern Iowa. He also is a Marine Corps combat veteran serving in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Received 2 meritorious promotions while serving in the Marine Corps. 3 years of firefighting experience, Firefighter 1 certified, Hazmat Ops certified, 5 years of law enforcement. He's also a SWAT member, firearms instructor, a bike patrol member, crime scene investigator certified. He's also a armorer for our pistols, shotguns, and rifles. He also does forensic cell phone analysis, which was quite a process to get him certified in that. He's also a member of the CFPD honor team. So we got some great members that are moving over to fire next week.
Thank you for that update. Moving on to item J is to go to executive session to discuss property acquisition per Iowa Code Section 21.51J to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate. Is there a motion, please?
So move. Second.
Motion second requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item K is public forum. Speakers will have up to one opportunity to speak for 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak tonight? Yes, ma'am. Name and address if you don't mind, please.
My name is Tracy Salentic, and I live at 1008 Rockland Street. This is my son, Joshua Salentic. He's 13, and he's in the 8th grade at Holmes Junior High. On October 2nd, he was taken into Jackson Crisis Stabilization Recovery Unit in Sioux City. He was placed there because he just simply said he was done. He was done with everything, and he was done with life. I'm sorry, this is a little difficult for me. Joshua was there for 6 days. And through his treatment course, his care team told us that Joshua was reliving our fire continuously. He's 13. Joshua dreams about our fire. Joshua doesn't sleep at night. Again, he's 13. Our son stays up at night protecting our home while we all sleep. And he doesn't sleep at night because that's his job. He's 13. As parents, we knew Joshua was struggling to cope with this loss. He has PTSD and now has to see a trauma therapist. He's 13. This fire has affected each member of our family. Our other 2 boys really don't understand why they lost everything. Jeff Olson, you said at the last city council meeting, quite frankly, I get a little irritated sometimes with all the negativity and people that come out and don't understand how the program operates. If we had a bad incident, it would be all over the media and in the papers. Define bad incident. We lost everything. Did one of these little precious boys have to die for it to be a bad incident? Because to us it was a bad incident. We lost our house, everything in it. Not to the first fire, not to the second, but to the third. This fire destroyed our home. If the PSO program was so great, where were they that night? Doesn't matter how much experience you tell us they have. If they don't show up, that doesn't really matter. Nobody showed up that night and saved anything in our home because you were there. It was just a kitchen fire. Nothing else was lost. We had some hope. We had a lot of hope. I'm sorry. Wouldn't it have been logical then to bring a fire truck out for a PSO to just stop by occasionally to check the scene, to see if it was rekindling? Because it was already a fire scene. To me, it would have made sense, especially since they were already on patrol. Even if the fire scene was deemed out, the potential in the first few hours for it to rekindle are high. Our home was an active fire scene later, and obviously the fire was not out. We do feel the city does owe us damages for negligence, irreparable harm to our children. This bad incident will not go away for us. It is an everyday battle to heal. We lost way more than what insurance could ever cover or replace. If this was any one of your homes that rekindled twice as a result of in a total loss, would you still feel the same way about Cedar Falls public safety right now? Or would you demand accountability? We demand accountability. Why should we pay the high cost to prove the city is negligent in a loss of our home when you already know that you are negligent? Because there was a public city council meeting that stated that there was going to be a change in policy after our fire, because of our fire. Other professionals, a doctor, a contractor, a lawyer, a teacher, a pastor, would have to take responsibility for negligence and be held accountable. The city of Cedar Falls should be no different. Wrong is wrong. And I have a $6,000 bill right here for my son's treatment. $6,000. Because my son wanted to harm himself because he can't deal with everything he lost that he ever owned in his whole life.
Thank you, Ms. Selenick. Anyone further? Yes, sir.
Jeremy Selenick, 1008 Rockland Street. What I have here is the SOG for the fire department. And I've just highlighted a few things, or actually Tracy highlighted them for me. Policy: all personnel shall observe the practices and precautions established in this guideline when responding to in-town structure fires. These are the highlighted points. Protect the structure and contents from unnecessary damage. Locate and extinguish all hot spots. Place the structure in a safe condition. Obviously, there was a hot spot that was missed. Heat guns, no guns, whatever. I mean, it only made sense that after I rekindle, people should have come out. I don't know, I gotta control myself here. I'm angry.
I understand.
Cedar Falls to monitor fire scenes for 24 hours. Let me see if I can find this here. Mr. Olson, after I spoke, said we are going to look into the policies of checking on fires. Quoted in here, the policies, and when I was trying to search for information from the city council and Kevin Rogers told me that the Courier misquoted this.
Need to refrain from names. Just direct the chair, if you would, please, per council policy. Thanks.
Okay. I was told that this reporter misquoted Jeff Olson.
Mr. Selenick.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That it was misquoted. If you go back to the May 15th, 2017 City Council meeting, you can hear it said policy. I have nothing further.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Anyone further? Yes, hang on, Jay, you can go next. Name and address, please.
Yep. Jim Cook, former president of Cedar Falls Firefighters Association, Local 1366, resident at 804 Lakeshore Drive here in Cedar Falls. Mayor and Council, thank you for this opportunity. As you're aware, I resigned my position with the City of Cedar Falls in early September. This was after 14 years of service to the city and 29 years total in service to the citizens of Cedar Falls. I'd like to first explain to you why I didn't leave. I didn't leave for a promotion. I didn't leave for better pay, taking a $20,000 pay cut, or for better benefits. I didn't leave for more time off, nor for my wife relocating her employment. I didn't leave for a shorter commute. In fact, it's 1,100 times or 1,100% longer one way now. I didn't leave because of PSOs. And I did not leave because I fear change. In fact, quite the contrary. I believe that those rather large changes I just spoke about demonstrate I am willing to make and work with necessary changes in my employment. I left for a progressive, growing department offering an opportunity to be safer in an already hazardous occupation, for a better chance to go home safely after every shift. I left because I believe this administration has chosen to not listen to its employees. I believe you choose to not meet or attempt to meet national standards. I think you fail to recognize that job-appropriate pre-employment screening and testing is incredibly important to making sure people are qualified to do the job of a firefighter. I left because in lieu of that, you wouldn't address our concerns of a lack of a testing process following a probational period, to name a couple. I left because I felt I could no longer trust the word of our administration. And I believe twice recently that our director has not been truthful in his comments to the media and citizens and taxpayers of Cedar Falls. Once, as Mr. Nelson, the Courier reporter, stated to me for saying that the union had never brought up concerns over safety with you about the PSO program as it is. As president, I spoke to you ad nauseum about our concerns publicly, privately, and in focus group meetings. I categorically deny that you had never had any knowledge of our safety concerns. The other was your denial, I believe, just a couple weeks ago of having no idea of a helmet cam video containing any audio, again, as reported in the Courier. I left because I felt this department was a hostile work environment. When an administrator comes to a department officers meeting and drops several F-bombs to emphasize veiled and maybe not so veiled threats as reported by our officers to gain compliance in their participation of the city's PSO program, I believe that to be extremely improper and inappropriate for any member of management. An action like this, at best, stifles discussion, exchange of ideas, and a collaborative work environment. At worst, it's unlawful and gives you what you have today: employees with poor morale and productivity, divisive and distrustful employees, and those that fear for their livelihood. I am blessed to have had the support of my family and friends. I am very fortunate to have served the citizens of Cedar Falls for so many years. I am now very fortunate to work for a progressive, caring department, one that is mission-driven and customer-focused. But instead of trying to mirror another department, maybe you and this administration should try looking in the mirror. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Jay, come up. I thought you raised your hand. Name and address, please.
My name is Jay Stoddard, 228 Mary Hill Drive. I'm here as a citizen, not representing the Sturgis Falls celebration, so I want to make that clear. I guess I have some different reads on this, and I'm sorry for the unhappiness of certain people and things that have happened, but the recent controversy of the city's implementation of public safety officers to reinforce both police and fire did catch my attention. I was puzzled about the controversy as it seemed very progressive and positive for the community. First of all, the city is being fiscally responsible, providing a community a safer environment while saving money. Sounds like a win-win. The only question was whether or not the crossover training of both the fire and police meets industry standards for both. And I checked it out, and the information I got is they do. This is not a willy-nilly city experiment, but rather a well-researched program, including looking at other communities who have implemented the use of public safety officers. Many council members and staff visited Kalamazoo, Michigan, where they have been utilizing public safety officers since the 1980s. Kalamazoo has a population of over 70,000 people. When Kalamazoo administrators were asked whether they felt their public safety officer program was successful or not, they gave it a resounding thumbs up. It was unequivocal. As a standalone firefighter or police officer, their level of contribution and importance to the safety of the community is maybe here, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But with the cross-training of each of these, now the level of importance and contribution to the community is greatly heightened and will garner greater respect. They are much more important. I look at public safety officers with more respect and admiration than just a standalone firefighter or police officer. They are public safety heroes in the community. Maybe kids, when they are growing up, will think it's pretty neat to be a public safety officer where they can be both a firefighter and a police officer. Cedar Falls has always been an innovative and progressive community. I think this was a great move on part of the city, and congratulations.
Thank you, Jay. Is there one back there? Yes, sir.
Darren Yoder, 4204 Berry Hill Road, and my script means nothing now. Progressive and innovative. The PSO model has been around over 100 years. I wouldn't say there's anything progressive or innovative about it. It's failed many cities. It's been proven that it is expensive. A PSO officer costs more than a police officer. A police officer costs more than a fireman. So the most expensive staff we could have, or personnel we could have, is a PSO officer. Then you need to train them to know everything a police officer needs to know and everything a firefighter needs to know. If you're going to do that, are you going to train them the same, to that level, to that degree, or are we going to have half-trained police and half-trained fire? That's a question. So the numbers I've looked at, this does not save the city any money. And if it does, please present that. I think a public forum might be helpful where we can ask more questions, 5 minutes at a time. It'll take me 6 months to say everything I'd like to say 5 minutes at a time. So instead of having a face-to-face 1 hour meeting. So I would like to have some discussion. I would like to be heard. I would like others to be heard. Pretty powerful what was said today. So let me get back on track maybe. So my first item was going to be the Insurance Service Office gives every city a rating. It's called an ISO rating. It's where insurance companies use, it's what insurance companies use to determine how good the fire department is in each city, and they charge their insurance premiums based off those ratings. Our last rating was in 2011 when we had no PSOs. So here we are in 2018 with 5 experienced firefighters gone. So I have to think our ISO rating is at risk of becoming worse. The question I asked last time wasn't addressed, so I'm asking it again. Has there been any notice that the Cedar Falls ISO rating is at risk of becoming worse? Should I wait for an answer?
Yeah, we'll answer when you're done. Thank you.
The other thing I want to address is why the firemen are leaving. Organizational change has been referenced as the reason. I mean, what do you expect? You're putting firemen in the fire station. Not only that, you're putting them in a supervisor role to be in charge of the firemen. Some of the firemen have been there well over 10 years. Do you expect the firemen to be okay with this? According to my research, you should have 4 to 7 years of fire experience to even apply for a supervisor position, such as lieutenant. I know some, I saw on the screen, they have some experience. But they should also have Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 certification. Only one had Firefighter 2 certification. And some states require firefighters, even entry-level firefighters, to have level 2 training. Ours have level 1. There's one that had level 2. So when you say that our firemen aren't okay with organizational change, what do you expect? And what do you think the citizens of Cedar Falls are going to say if you even care? So, and this is where I need to pause. I want the police officers to know, and I want everyone to know that I support our police officers. Without question, they have my utmost respect. This is not about the individuals. They will do the best they can. But the city is putting them in a dangerous situation. Not only is there potential, they put the firefighters at unnecessary risk with their lack of experience. They're putting their own lives at risk, and furthermore, the entire city at risk. I commend the police officers, but we shouldn't put them through this experiment. One last thing. I know that it's been said that there's 131 agencies that have a PSO training, but in fact, of the 131 agencies researched, only 33 agencies have fully consolidated police and fire and have fully cross-trained personnel, 33. Less than 1%. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anyone further before I close public comment off? Hearing and seeing none, open up to council for questions or comments to each other or staff.
If I may, can we get some answers to the questions from Chief Olson here?
Director Olson?
Excuse me, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Mark, do you have anything else added?
No, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Director
Yeah,
Olson?
certainly. So I'll try to address some of them, and then maybe I'll recap a little bit about what the program is about. So as far as the rekindling goes, those were full-time firefighters that determined that the scene was safe. It really didn't have anything to do with PSOs, but I need to be very careful about any comments about that fire there due to litigation concerns or threats. I think there was maybe some misunderstanding on the helmet cam video. I was aware that there was a helmet cam video that was available, but I hadn't seen it since February, so I'm just not familiar with what's on it. So I hope to review that tomorrow and take a look at that. I'd also like to say that I have never used an F-bomb during a supervisor meeting. Also, questions to the ISO ratings. We have a upcoming ISO reevaluation. They do that every 5 years or so. The ISO evaluations are really based upon a lot of things that are very difficult to control. 50% are water flow, which has to do with your hydrants and how many hydrants and where the location, the size of the water pipes, all sorts of different things. It also has to do with the dispatching abilities. It all has to do with the equipment that you have. And then as far as the PSOs go, the ISO office does recognize public safety officers, and you do get points for having public safety officers. So they are recognized there. And I would have to check with the fire chief for certain, but I know there's a comment about only one of the 4 being firefighter 2 certified, but I think a majority of our firefighters are not firefighter 2 certified. Am I correct?
I don't know the exact numbers, I guess.
Okay.
I know 2 of the people that we have coming are firefighter 2 certified.
Okay, but as far as the full-timers go, I think they're not required to be firefighter 2, and I don't believe most of them, the majority of them are, but I guess I shouldn't say that in the same level for sure. So let me briefly explain again what the public safety program is and why we're doing this. So we're cross-training public safety employees so they can serve as a role as a police officer and firefighter. So what they do is the police officer will carry their fire gear in their car, and when they're needed, they'll respond to a fire scene, and they put their gear on and act as a firefighter. So they're available to respond immediately to the scene. So what we're seeing is we're seeing more people available immediately to respond to police scenes and fire scenes, and we have more people available to respond in case we have a callback. If we have a need and we need to call more police officers or firefighters, we have more to call in. So you have the same number of people, and what you do is you take a few from the fire side, or you take as many that want to become involved in the program, and you teach them both police and fire skills. But a majority of the PSO officers are going to work the police side in the squad car. That puts more police officers on the street. You're going to have a few less in the firehouse because there's a lot of idle time there, and you get more use out of your individual if you move them to the patrol car. So you may have the same number of people, but you have more available to respond immediately to the scene. And we've experienced some of that. We've seen as many as 12 on one call, 14 another, even 19 firefighters working at one time that all responded immediately to a call. Now, this isn't always the case. There's a few times where we don't have that number, but we're only about halfway through our training process with public safety officers. We currently have 21 full-time firefighters, 21 public safety officers that are cross-trained police and fire, 19 in training. That gives us a total of 61 firefighters. Never in the history of this department have we had that many. The most we've had is about 30-some, maybe 35 or so. We also have more police officers on each shift, so we have more police officers on patrol. That's one thing I don't want to lose on people. There are several advantages to this model. So it is true, a public safety officer costs more than a police officer, costs more than a firefighter. But in order to meet these numbers, what you would need to do is you would need to hire about 10 more police officers and 10 more firefighters at a cost of, it's around, for every public safety employee you have, it's about $100,000. You had 10, you're adding $1 million to the budget. You had 20, you're adding $2 million to the budget. We can get more in the scene by doing this cross-training effort at a very similar cost. It is a safer, more efficient, more effective model. We monitor our calls. We monitor our response to our calls. Our crime rate's steady. Fire calls nationwide are down 60% in the last 40 years, with Cedar Falls experiencing only about 6 serious fire calls a year. So it makes sense. This process makes sense. We've looked at public safety models. We've looked at POC, which are paid on call models. We looked at part-time models. We looked at all these different models to see what would work best for us. In fact, in 2005, we first started some of the cross-training efforts. That's where I was first cross-trained, in 2005. And it was under a little different program. And we've since examined different programs and looked at different cities to see how that works. And there's been some comments frequently made about you can't train someone to do 2 jobs. Well, actually you can, and I think we have a fire department that's shown that can happen. We have full-time firefighters. Matter of fact, if you look at all the majority of the state of Iowa is served by volunteer firefighters. They all have daytime jobs, and they do this part-time. That's 2 jobs. But we also have Cedar Falls, full-time Cedar Falls firefighters. One's a heavy diesel mechanic. One overhauls transmissions. One works for an insurance company. One was an electrician, paramedic. One owns a construction business, builds houses for a living. So there's many, many examples of people that can do 2 occupations, and we're having great success. In fact, we have one police officer that made a statement. I want to be as good a firefighter as I am police officer. He takes this seriously, and he's working diligently. These 4 that I read you the bios on, I think they're very impressive bios. When we met with those battalion chiefs, a few days later, we met with these 4 individuals, talked about the plan to them. They all accepted it. One of them said that very day, we had to get, we want to get training. We want to gear it up. We want to make sure we're the best firefighters we can. They immediately talked about training sessions that they can hold together, they can hold with their shifts, that they will come in on off duty. You would just be amazed at some of the conversations they have because they want to make this program successful. Many cities don't attempt this, and I'm not making this up. I've been told this by other cities, one of them being Kalamazoo, and they did do it. It says you are going to meet a lot of resistance, and we're witnessing it here. Nothing would be easier for me to do than to go to the council and say, hey, sorry, but you need to give me another $1 million because I got to hire 10 more people and not do this cross-training. It'd be a piece of cake for me to do that, but that's not the right thing to do in my mind, or in many, many other people's mind. It's quite interesting. I was at a conference last week, and during this attendance, there's 2 sessions that I attended that really kind of hit home with what we're going through right now. One of them was about union relations. Another one was on communicating with the media in your community. And it talked a lot about, really what it talked about is when you're having troubles with certain issues. It may be officer-involved shootings or maybe big organizational change, which is something we're going through. I swear that somebody here taught that class because they were talking about the exact same things that we're going through here. They talked about the unions are going to outcry of safety and grievances and prohibited practice complaints, which we're experiencing. And even some mistreatment of employees, and they said you're just going to see a lot of that, and that's unfortunately we've seen a lot of. I'm not going to talk about the details. I don't want to air the dirty laundry, but I just think it's important for some of the citizens to know that we take this seriously. This is a successful program. It will be a successful program. We're about halfway there. I can only imagine what it's going to be. We're going to get the 19 other PSOs in training trained, and we got the new hires that we haven't even put in training yet. We're in a transition phase, but we're making progress. We've researched this model. As one of them indicated, there are 130 people that do this model, and there are varying degrees. Woodbury, Minnesota, we went to. When you get hired, you're either a police officer, paramedic, or you're a police officer, firefighter. You're one or the other. We've got many Des Moines suburbs that have POCs that are paid on call, which are kind of a part-timer, but or you have part-timers, or you have volunteers. There's all sorts of different models out there of firefighting. It's not just one model fits all. When you go to research this, it is amazing how many different models there are. Bloomington, Minnesota, which this was actually a shocker to me, and we've done a lot of research. Mall of America's in Bloomington, Minnesota, population 85,000. Last we talked to them, and all admit it's about a year ago, 3 full-time firefighters, that's it. That's all they got. The rest of them are part-time, or as they call them, POCs. It is just, when you go out there and you explore and you see, there's so many more different models, and they're all changing for reasons. And some of them didn't change. Some of them just stayed paid on call and never moved to full-time. I wish I had time to sit here for an hour and explain this, and I'd invite anyone to come in and sit down with one-on-one and talk to us. We've had several people ask to do that. We've had several people come in and we talk to them, and a lot of them walk away saying, wow, I didn't know that. You know what, this isn't a bad program. And we've some, we walk away and we agree to disagree. But if you give this thing a chance, this thing can be phenomenal. We have done our homework, and I'm a very firm believer in it. Cost is going to be the same or similar. We have more police officers responding on calls, more firefighters responding immediately to the scene, and more available for callback. How can that be a bad thing? How can that make us less safe? And it'll get better as time goes on. So, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Director Olson. Only because I noticed it today, the list of all of our personnel, I believe it seemed to me the career firefighters majority did have firefighter 2. So I don't know that in terms
You know
of
what?
my list.
I don't know.
It's
not a requirement.
Not a requirement, but I happened to look at it today.
Okay.
So, any further questions, Mr. Whelan?
Thank you. Typically in public forum, we do not speak out against questions that have been brought up. But I'm going to speak out a little bit because Cedar Falls is very, very fortunate that we have 7 council members that are proactive in solving problems before they become problems. And we're very lucky that we have a staff that looks into these 5 years before it hits the newspaper. In the case of police and fire, it was many years ago, maybe as much as 10 years, that we started to hear about cities in Iowa that were going broke because they couldn't afford the police and fire. Equipment went up, everything. Most of those have reacted to the problem by going with volunteer. We didn't. We researched and looked at what's the best thing for the people of Cedar Falls. Director Olson has gone over all those reasons. I'm not going to repeat them. But this council was actively involved in researching a very difficult and complex problem. And I'm fortunate to be a part of 7 people who understand what staff has been doing at our request, not theirs, ours, in order to solve a problem proactively. So we've been working on this a long time. It's very complex. I hear people coming up and sending me mails with 1 or 2 issues they'd like resolved. And I invite them to come in and talk to our public safety director, the police chief and fire chief, and go over all the issues, all the pros and cons of what we've done. But it's not something we thought of very lightly. It's something we thought of over the years. And there are other cities that understand what we've done and are looking at our models. So I'm proud to be a part of this council, and I appreciate all the heat that Director Olson is taking, and wish you keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whelan. Mr. Cruz?
I was kind of curious, as a new council person, I'm unfamiliar with the Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 training levels. Could you just elaborate on that, how they attain number 2 and various certifications, hazard material operations? I'm assuming you just take an extra class or 2, or you attend live fires with hazard materials, or can you elaborate on that, please, for the public?
Both of them. You obtain your Firefighter 1, obviously, before you obtain your Firefighter 2. You attend some classrooms for Firefighter 1. Then you have to take a written test, and you have to pass that written test. And then there's a skills test as well. And the Firefighter 2 is a very similar certification. It is most, well, I'm just going to speak for Cedar Falls. We require a firefighter 1. We don't require a firefighter 2. But the state doesn't require either. You can be a firefighter and not have either. But it's a standard that we've adopted, and I believe most full-time firefighter 1 standard is adopted. So I hope that answers your question.
I'm just curious on the distinction.
Sure. You know, maybe I should add one more thing. I'm sorry, but in the future, Mr. Whelan's comments made me think of this. So in the future, as our city grows, will we have a need for more police officers or more firefighters? Part of the public safety program increases those numbers so we can also defer hiring more to a considerable amount of time further in the future, thus saving a director or a chief coming to you 5 years or 10 years from now. The city is growing, saying we need more, we need more. So that is another advantage that cities have experienced when they go to these different models that they have.
Thank you.
I would have a little follow-up on that then. When you speak of cities that have volunteer fire departments, they're not considered a firefighter 1, or can a volunteer fireman become a firefighter 1 certified?
Many of them are, but I know there are some volunteers that are not firefighter 1 certified. Yeah. But you can still be a firefighter on that department.
Anything further from council? Mr. Green?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question as far as the certification level goes for the medical side for firefighters and PSOs. We had some discussion over email about that. Just to clarify, for firefighters, is there a requirement for a certain level of, say, they must be certified as EMT versus a PSO must be certified as first responder? How does that work?
That is how it works. The firefighters are EMTs. The police officers are certified in, I believe it's called an EMR now, Emergency Medical Response, which is a lower level than EMT. So that's the level. But Sartori paramedics provide our ambulance service here. We assist them on a certain number of calls. But our primary ambulance service and transportation services by Sartori paramedics.
So is it just deemed that that higher level of certification isn't really necessary, as a requirement? It's more just encouraged for PSOs and firefighters to obtain higher levels?
Well, we have, a lot of it depends on the job classification. When you have a job classification for a union employee, if you change that job classification, then they have the ability to negotiate for a higher wage if you're requiring more of them. So we have to be very careful when you know, so we can ask and they can volunteer and take those classes. And we know some of, a lot of union employees are more than willing to do that, and some are not interested.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, council, this evening?
I kind of hesitate, but I've been trying to formulate this question for Jeff. But I know one of the concerns that we hear from the firefighters is lack of experience that our PSOs have. Don't all firefighters start out with no experience? They go to firefighter 1, go to school, then they come to a fire department and really get some heavy duty on the job training. I mean, isn't that the case? Do all firefighters, you're not born a firefighter, you've got to have experience and be supervised by trained firefighters.
That is correct. So I'm going to look at it this way. The 4 individuals moving to fire already have, the least has 3 years, the highest has 14 years. If we hired a new individual, they'd have none, and we'd be starting that whole process over. So they've certainly got a huge jump. Right. The training for the public safety officer, they do not start operating as a firefighter until they've been through the Firefighter 1 certification process, and the firefighters here in Cedar Falls have checked them off on it's a 44-page skills manual that we have that they check them off on. So then they say, okay, they've gone through all these skills. Then they attend the same monthly training that the full-time firefighters do. You know, so that I think the training is very good. In fact, I think we've had a few articles in the paper about it, with the live burns of the buildings, or we brought in a burn trailer, or we brought in another tank that was on fire and that they worked with, and that was just a few weeks ago. So we do a lot of what we call live fire training. So there's a lot that goes on, but the PSOs are very good about coming when we have a callback, and we have about 6 serious fires a year. They'll come in and they're in as much as they can to get that experience.
But for this to really work, we really need to have, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for our firefighters, but we need to know that they are doing their best to train our PSOs to be as good of firefighters as they are. And this isn't going to work if we don't get to that point. And I hope we get to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Dare. Anyone else from council?
I do have a quick follow-up.
Sure.
Director Olson, can you elaborate on, I know we got the International Fire Code, and that's probably more related towards building design. And then you mentioned what's the state level requirement for whether it's a volunteer or a paid fireman? And you mentioned then the skills manual with 44 items. So how does that all relate? I mean,
okay. So, and please, Fire Chief Boswick, if I say anything in error here, let me know. But so if you want to be state certified as a firefighter, you go through the firefighter class, you take the written test, and then there's a skills test that you do for the state. So they'll send however many individuals in, and you don't know what the skills are. They're going to, it's probably going to be one of, you can guess about 50, or not one, but it'll be several of, say, 15 different skills that you suspect. You go in, you've got to pass those skills with these individuals the state sends, and if you pass that and you pass your written test, they'll certify you as firefighter 1. The 44-page skills manual is a Cedar Falls manual put together by our firefighters. So that's put together, and that's what our firefighters use to run our firefighters through all of the different skills that are in that manual before we allow them to put their gear in their car and to operate as a public safety officer or a firefighter.
so the PSO is going through the skills manual and the state required levels?
Yes.
Training levels. Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Very good. We will adjourn now to executive session. Thank you very much for joining us.